whose line I'll be crossing. And but nevertheless, it is our duty to try and go as far as we possibly can. But I think that if we are to reach a better place, a better future, then the government has to liberalize. It has to give greater space to dissenting views. And I fear that at this time, the government is not giving any space, very little space, unimpeded space. Of course, people use the space. I think the government must be prepared to actually voluntarily open this up for us.
Just taking now to the current regime and the incumbent administration for a while, you spoke of a political architecture that was problematic. And you are now referring to that same political architecture as having the power to give, in a sense, civil society the space to operate. Now, that to me seems a problematic power relationship. You are criticizing the very institution or mechanism, and at the same time expecting that to create the space for civil society. My question is then twofold. How realistic is this expectation, and are you, in all that you have submitted to the viewers of the program, saying that civil society really, writ large, and within civil society, NGOs in particular, really have no power?
Well, my hope is that the phase we are passing through is a temporary phase. A temporary phase where the government has set itself on defeating the LTTE as its first and main priority. And in order to defeat the LTTE, in order to mobilize every resource at its disposal to defeat the LTTE, in order to meet any cost involved in defeating the LTTE, that it is not giving society this freedom. And my hope is that once the LTTE is defeated in the eyes of the government, that the government will, for the sake of a better future in the country, liberalize. And if it does not liberalize, then
you spoke about the problems that might arise thereof.
Yeah, then of course I'm also hopeful then that this is a democracy, this being a democracy, the people will see that such a government has outlived its usefulness.
Like Churchill.
Like Churchill. Because up to now, the people have shown, the majority of people have shown, that they actually back the government. They also believe, or they have come to believe, that there is no other alternative than to militarily defeat the LTTE and eliminate the LTTE. And they have given the government the relatively free hand to go ahead. But once that has been accomplished, and if there is no change, then the people of this country, who have in the past shown a track record of changing governments and wanting change, that will begin to operate once again.
But Jehan, that just brings into sharp focus perhaps the second question that I asked. I mean, today, right now, and maybe for the past 2 years, or two or 3 years, within such a context where the majority of people in the South, it's not an unpopular regime, it's not an unpopular president, have NGOs in particular, and has civil society writ large, really lost the plot? Does it have any traction amongst the people? Has it, to any measurable degree, any meaningful degree, through your experience, shaped public opinion to flag or address the points that you have raised?
See, I think public opinion, to a large extent, it follows the government. It follows the political trend and for government. For instance, during Ranil Wickramasinghe's government, during that period, and also Chandrika Kumaratunga's last period, I think public opinion polls showed that people, although they began to be very critical of the peace process towards the end, they nevertheless spoke in terms of, they wanted a political solution. 70% of the people were saying in favor of devolution as a political solution, saying that a political solution was necessary, and were not actually wanting to go to war. There was no vote public opinion polls at least, did not show any vote in favor of war. And even at that presidential election, the decisive one of 2005, President Rajapaksa, or at least at that time he was Prime Minister, he never promised, he never said he'll go to war. He said he will give us a dignified peace. And he also said that the peace process of the past was flawed, the ceasefire was flawed, he would redo all that. But he said, and I think people thought he would bring peace, and he also said, I will meet Prabhakaran, I will speak to Prabhakaran and bring peace. And I think that's what people voted for. So it just shows that during that period, during the Ranil Wickremesinghe, Chandrika Kumartunga latter part of Chandrika, people's minds had been changed, and the NGOs also were part of that. At this time, the government for the last 2 years has been berating NGOs, discrediting NGOs, and as a result, a certain hostility and suspicion towards NGOs has developed in people, but I would not say it is some unchanging thing. For instance, my experience at this time, working at the field level, going to the districts, is that people are conscious, they know the cost of the war. And so when we talk to them, we find that they are prepared to go further than what the government apparently is prepared to go in terms of political reforms. For instance, we have had community leaders, respected people in the districts, school principals, government officials, local level politicians, signing on, publicly signing on to statements that go beyond the 13th Amendment provincial councils.
And who has, where are these, what are these statements?
And these have been published. We have published one or two in the newspapers. We have advertised and placed them. And the people have known that their names are going to be shown in public, and yet they are willing to stand by that because they know they might be criticized by their neighbors for having agreed to such a... So this shows that, I mean, there is a certain responsiveness. So I think civil society, NGOs, we have a role, and this is what gives me the hope and the confidence that when the government gives leadership in the future, if it does, then it can take the people with it to a just solution.
I half-jokingly asked you before the start of the program, do we in civil society and in NGOs have to eat humble pie and say that maybe we were wrong, and that the LTTE could be militarily defeated, and that a solution could only ever be thought of, or the beginning of a solution could ever be thought of once the LTTE was militarily quashed, and that it was not possible to actually negotiate with them as a partner. Might the articulation of this in public, you feel, again from your experience at the council as well, build some sort of a greater legitimacy to NGOs? Where the perception predominantly is that they were favoring the LTTE, they said that the LTTE couldn't be defeated, said that the process of negotiations had to include them in talks, and that essentially this was a failed idea.